Dordle, Quartle, Octortle, Taylordle, Revertle, Polygonal. When I say we're trying to make the next Wordle, and by we, I mean me and my game dev partner, Paeri, I'm not saying we're trying to make a Wordle spin-off. There are already plenty of those. We're trying to make an original daily word game that resonates with people, that connects with people. Like how Wordle did in 2021 when it was released by designer Josh Wardle and then blew up in popularity so much that the New York Times bought it in 2022. Now, I don't delude myself into thinking that our game will reach the level of popularity that Wordle did, but that's not the goal. The goal is to create and release an original game that we enjoy playing and that other people enjoy playing, even if those people are just our friends and family. Which is who Wordle was originally created for too. Josh Wardle's goal was to make a game that he and his partner could play together, and then it unexpectedly blew up and became a huge hit. So this video is the story of how Paeri and I got to today. The release day for a game that we have been working on for over a year and is the first release of our two-person indie game studio. Now this story starts 2 years ago in the summer of 2023 when I had the delusional idea to sign up for a video game development course with zero coding experience. But I had extensive game design experience as a board game designer with games published by Hasbro, Ravensburger, WizKids, and others. For many years, I only pitched to publishers who would then deal with the manufacturing, distribution, and shipping of the games that I designed. But I have always wanted to publish my own games. However, the idea of overseeing the production and sales of a physical product like a board game seems like way too much of a financial risk for me. Like, what if I miscalculate the total weight of the shipment coming from the factory and I end up spending twice the amount that I projected? Or what if I don't sell as many copies as I was hoping for and now my studio apartment is full of games that I paid for and are now collecting dust? So I don't really see myself self-publishing a physical product unless it's with a print-on-demand service like the Game Crafter, which I am seriously considering, but the idea of creating and publishing my own digital game has always interested me. There's a lot less financial risk to publishing a video game rather than a board game, especially since you can make updates and changes to your game if players find issues. For a board game, if a game has missing components or the rulebook is wrong, the publisher will have to mail out the missing parts or wait until they reprint the game, if they ever do, to fix the rulebook, or they might post an FAQ or an updated rulebook online and hope that players find it. But with video games, you can make corrections in a new build update, which takes a bit of the pressure off of making sure things are 100% correct on release day. So I signed up for this class in the hopes of learning more about indie game development and coding, and quickly realized that the coding mountain I would have to climb to even make the simplest game was so steep that I might die before getting to the top. And so I accepted that I might want to consider teaming up with one of my classmates who already knew how to code rather than trying to do everything entirely on my own. And so in one of those classes, Paeri, who was the only other woman in the class, gave an answer to the teacher's question about a line of code, and I had no idea what they were talking about, but Paeri clearly did. So after the course wrapped up, I reached out to Paeri to see if she might be interested in teaming up, and thankfully she said yes. In this partnership, I would bring my skills in game design and playtesting, as well as graphic design, marketing, and project management, while Paeri brought her extensive coding skills, having worked as a software engineer and earning a degree in computer science. We agreed that we wanted to create a simple game to start with, so that we could finish it and release it fairly quickly, and learn from the experience of seeing a game through from concept to release. We also wanted to make a game that would have very low maintenance, meaning I didn't want to have to create an original puzzle every day like in games like Strands and Connections. And we wanted to make a game that we could release on itch.io and my website and possibly as an app, but I'll talk more about that later. The first idea we tried in December 2023 was called Book Slice, where a page from a book would be slowly revealed, and the quicker a player guessed the title of the book, the more points they would get. We only use pages from books in the public domain to avoid copyright issues. But as we worked on the game, we realized there just weren't enough well-known books in the public domain, and so there just wouldn't be enough content for this game. We could possibly have reached out to publishing houses to partner with, but as a brand new indie game studio with no games under our belt, we decided to archive this and move on. And killing your darlings is something I am very comfortable with. After years of board game design experience, I have become pretty ruthless about cutting games that aren't working, and I do think that not getting too attached to your ideas is a great thing, especially your early ideas, so that you can get to the better ideas faster. In January 2024, we tried a game that I came up with to play with my family over Christmas called Word Between. And the idea was I gave 2 words to my family and they had to figure out the one word that was found between those 2 words in the dictionary. My family enjoyed this one a lot, and so I thought it could maybe work as a digital game. For this one, Paeri created a playable prototype in Unity, which we sent out to playtesters for proof of concept. I'm a big believer in getting playtester feedback early and often, especially early, because you can save yourself a lot of time and energy if one of your playtesters lets you know that the game you created already exists. One of our playtesters, Denny, let us know about a game called Betweenal, which was very similar to Word Between, with the main difference being that the players started by guessing any word, and then the game would let them know how close they were to the secret word. So the player would continue to guess until they found the word between 2 other words. We also got feedback from playtesters that they would enter a word that was technically between the 2 other words, but because it wasn't in our reference dictionary, it was marked as wrong. So based on playtester feedback and learning that a very similar game already exists, we moved on. It was at this time that I created a spreadsheet to keep track of other word and puzzle games that we would come across, so we would become more aware of the other games that are already out there to hopefully avoid this issue in the future. The next idea we explored in March 2024 was called One Letter at a Time, where the player would be given one of the letters found in the secret word, and they would guess a word that has that letter, and if they guess the secret word, they win. But more likely they won't guess the secret word, but if their guess had the letter in the correct place in the word, they would lock in that letter and get a new letter found in the word. The player would continue guessing until they correctly guessed the secret word. We didn't end up moving forward with that idea because in April 2024, I had a new idea that I made a paper prototype for and had my sister Liz play it, and it seemed to work really well. I called it Flip Flop, and the main idea was having double-sided letter tiles, and the player had to flip the tiles back and forth until they found the secret word. In order to save Paeri the time it would take to create a prototype in Unity before knowing if the game idea really was viable, I made a prototype in Tabletopia, which is a program I use to playtest board games online. We sent out this fairly crude Tabletopia prototype to our playtester email list, and the feedback was positive. It was definitely a good sign that players enjoyed this game in this very basic format. We also asked playtesters to suggest new names since Flip Flop was already taken by a different mobile game. And one playtester, Lucas, suggested the name Letter Flip, and the more I rolled that name around in my head, the more I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like Letter Flip. You know, like...
Let it rip, let it fly.
Let her rip, hang pen. Let her rip.
Over the next year, we would send out 5 iterations of Letter Flip to our playtesters, with each version incorporating the playtester feedback we received from the previous version. In the early versions of the game, we had a flip counter that tallied all of the players' flips until they found the hidden word. The player tried to flip the fewest number of times possible, and on the end screen, we showed how many flips they did and what the minimum number of flips were for each word. Now, in the early versions of the game, players were able to flip the letters back and forth until they found a word and then would submit it to see if it was the hidden word we were looking for. But there were times that a player would find a word and submit it, but it wasn't the word that we were looking for. So one of the major changes we made, which was suggested by a few playtesters, was to lock in a tile that was correctly flipped and turn it green. Now the player knows not to flip that letter back and that it is correct. And if a player flips a letter that should not have been flipped, it turns red. And when it's turned back, it turns gray and is also locked to show that it is now correct but was incorrectly flipped. Based on playtester feedback, we also moved the minimum number of flips from the end screen to the puzzle screen so the player would know how many of the letters needed to be flipped. This information helps the player deduce which letters to flip. And if they happen to spell out a word, but then they see that there are still letters to flip, then they know that that's not the word we're looking for. We tried having both words and phrases in the game, but some playtesters didn't like the phrases, and we also wanted to keep this game as low maintenance as possible, meaning we didn't want to have to come up with a bunch of phrases for the game, and so we got rid of the phrases. We ultimately decided to have the length of the words increase throughout the week. So Mondays and Tuesdays, the words are 6 letters long. Wednesdays and Thursdays, they are 7 letters long. Fridays, they're 8 letters long. Saturdays, they're 9 letters long. And Sundays, they are 10 letters long. And we decided to have 3 word puzzles a day, since 1 word puzzle didn't feel like enough, but 3 didn't feel like too much. And Paeri made this really cool countdown to show when the next puzzle will be released, set to midnight local time for the player. Paeri also created an archive for all of the puzzles, so players will be able to play every puzzle we've ever had regardless of when they discover the game. Now, we always knew we wanted to have a stats or leaderboard after the player finished their daily puzzles. Initially, we showed how many flips the player did and the minimum number of flips needed for each word. And we also tried having a strike system where if a player incorrectly flipped a letter, they would get a strike, and if they incorrectly flipped 3 letters, they would get 3 strikes and lose that puzzle. They would then see their strike distribution and win percentage on the end screen, similar to the end screen of Wordle that shows a player's win percentage and guess distribution. But we got rid of the strike system because it didn't feel great for a player to lose the puzzle if they got 3 strikes. We also wanted the game to feel rewarding rather than punishing. So instead, Paeri built a star scoring system where players lose a star for each incorrect flip, but they can continue to guess until they find the word. The player will earn all 3 stars if they don't make any incorrect flips. They'll earn 2 if they make 1 wrong flip, 1 star if they make 2 wrong flips, and no stars if they make 3 wrong flips. The player stars are then added to a leaderboard to encourage players to play every day to see how their score stacks up against others. I also play every day so you can see if you can beat my score. But in order for a player's score to accumulate from day to day, we needed to implement a sign-in system. We had originally planned on releasing the game as an app where players could easily sign in, but we ultimately decided to keep things very simple and cheap since you have to pay to get your games on the iOS and Android stores, and only release the game on my website and on itch.io. In the future, if we have a few games that we could bundle together into an app, then we would consider making an app at that point. Since we weren't going to have this game as an app, we had to figure out a way for players to sign in so they could climb up the leaderboard every day. This was definitely our biggest technical challenge. Paeri spent months troubleshooting this issue. She used Unity's authentication service to try out a few different identity providers. She tried creating a sign-in through Unity player accounts, but it was not working on the embedded iframe on my website. This is apparently a known issue, but not a priority for them to fix. She also tried using a system where the player created their own username and password for letter flip, but we ultimately decided it would be easier if players could just sign in through Google rather than having to remember and enter their username and password every time. Since neither of those options were working, we weren't quite sure what we were going to do at this point. We thought about possibly going back to the idea of making this game an app where players could easily sign in through their phones, but we knew we still would want the game to be playable on my website, so Paeri really tried to find a solution for this. After searching and searching, she came across the simple sign-in asset by Hippo Games. Using this asset, Paeri was able to get the sign-in working on itch.io and on my website on desktop computers, but the sign-in was not working on mobile browsers. And we knew we needed the sign-in to work on mobile since many daily word gamers play the games on their phones. It took Paeri weeks of using her coding wizardry and troubleshooting with Hippo Games on Discord until finally she was able to get the sign-in to work on mobile on my website. So now players could sign in on both itch and on my website, whether they're on desktop or mobile. This was a huge moment for us because if Paeri didn't figure this out, we would have to make a major pivot about how we release this game. We want to thank Hippo Games for creating this asset and for helping Paeri solve this problem. I'll link to the Hippo Games GitHub in case this asset might be helpful for you too. Now you might be wondering why we didn't just release the game on itch.io and why we were so concerned about getting the game working on my website. And there are 2 main reasons for this. The first is that my website already gets some traffic, and so having the game on there will help with exposure. And secondly, I was able to get Google Ads working on the game page, and so this will be the the main way that we monetize the game, which is free to play. We also created a Buy Me a Coffee page, so if you enjoy the game and you want to support us, we would appreciate any and all donations. Throughout this time, I have been creating different logos for our studio, which we ended up calling Paeri Games, which is a mashup of our names, Pam and Ari. Ari made the point that Paeri kind of sounds like fairy, and so I started to work on a logo that incorporated fairy wings. And I realized that the pattern in the wings I could make to look like a circuit board, and that would indicate that this is a digital game studio rather than a board game studio. Once the gameplay was nailed down, I created a logo for the game itself, as well as all of the in-game icons, like the star, the gear icon, and the question mark, and a bunch of little icons for the settings tab. In the settings, we also made sure to include a thanks to all of the playtesters who helped shape this game into what it is today. You'll notice we did not spend a lot of time making the game look pretty until the gameplay was finalized. This is a lesson I learned when I first got serious about game design many years ago, when I spent way too much time worrying about making the game look pretty without spending any time to see if it was actually fun to play. Once we felt like we had a solid game that was actually going to be released, I put together a revenue sharing contract for us that relied on some helpful templates that I found online and modified to make sense for our situation. So any money that we might generate from ads or donations will be split between Ari and I 50-50. I'll link to the contract templates below in case they're helpful for you as well. And now, after 6 months of trying out different ideas and then over a year of developing the game we saw the most promise in, Letter Flip is finally available to the public. The links to play it on my website or itch.io are below. If you end up playing it on itch, please leave a comment and a rating. We would love to see you over there. But regardless of where you play it, we would love to hear your feedback on the game, which you can do by clicking on the gear icon and then give us feedback. This is the first release for our 2-person indie game studio, and we're still learning a lot, and so we would love to hear your feedback on the game. I'm already brainstorming ideas for our next game, so if you want to stay up to date or playtest our future games, be sure to sign up to our email list, which I'll link below. I'm so excited about and proud of Letter Flip. I have been playing it daily for the past 2 months, and I genuinely look forward to solving the puzzles every day. I'm super grateful that Ari said yes to teaming up with me and creating this game that we enjoy playing and our friends and family enjoy playing. And if you enjoy playing, well, that's the cherry on top. Throw some cherry emojis in the comments below to show that you made it all the way to the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hang 10, Letter Flip.